Hi everyone, I'm your host Faisal and welcome to my channel Tales Beyond the Porch. Today's story is very interesting, very loyal story, and let's hear it from our narrator.
I thought my life ended the night I discovered the truth about my marriage. That night, everything I had built, everything I had believed in, fell apart. But what happened the next day changed everything. I woke up in my truck with a stiff neck and that hollow feeling you get when you forget, just for a moment, what happened, until the memory comes crashing back. The house that used to feel like home now felt cold, like a crime scene. I had a few things to grab, but I wasn't ready to face her. Grace, my wife, had already shown me what I was too blind to see for years. The man I caught her with was the final straw, but it had all been unraveling long before that moment. I drove to my apartment, a tiny one-bedroom across town that felt more like a temporary shelter than a real home. There was no glamour, no luxury, just the basics. A couch, a mattress, a coffee maker. I had everything I needed to survive, but nothing that felt like life. And so I worked. I worked long hours, not just to pay the bills, but to keep my mind busy. If I worked hard enough, maybe I wouldn't have to feel the sting of betrayal. Then the text started, from Betty, Grace's best friend. The one woman I never expected to hear from, especially now. Hey, I heard about what happened. I'm sorry. I know you probably don't want to talk, but I just wanted you to know someone sees you in this. That first text hit harder than I anticipated. It wasn't just the words. It was the tone. No judgment, no pretending like she didn't know what was going on. Just an acknowledgement that I wasn't invisible, that I wasn't alone. The message was simple, but it was something I hadn't heard in a long time. Someone cared. And over the next few weeks, that was the theme. Betty checked in here and there. Not often, just enough to remind me she was there. At first, I thought I should block her number. I should keep my distance. She was Grace's best friend, after all. But every time I considered it, something told me not to. She wasn't like Grace. She wasn't the one who had broken me, and she didn't pretend like she had all the answers. A few months passed, and one evening, I got another text from her. Hey, Jake. It's been a while. I know things are probably still crazy for you, but would you want to talk? I'm here if you need someone. I stared at the screen for a long time before finally typing a response. Yeah, we can talk. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I didn't know what would come next, but part of me felt like maybe I needed to stop pretending I was okay. I had been running on empty for so long, pushing the pain deep down, convincing myself I was fine. But I wasn't, and maybe Betty of all people would understand that. The next day, I showed up to the cafe where we agreed to meet. The place was small, cozy, with a little hum of chatter in the background. I was early, but it didn't matter. I had no idea what I was walking into. I didn't know if I was ready to talk to her, or if I even wanted to. But when I saw Betty walking through the door, my heart did something unexpected. She wasn't dressed to impress, or trying to be something she wasn't. She looked like herself, comfortable, approachable, light brown hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, a soft sweater, jeans. But the thing that stood out was her eyes. They weren't the bright, carefree eyes I'd seen years ago at parties or in Grace's pictures. No, they were different now. They were softer, more understanding, and filled with a sadness I hadn't expected. She smiled when she saw me, a small, genuine smile, and I felt something shift inside of me. Hey, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. Hey, I replied, not sure what to say next. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We just sat there, the awkwardness hanging between us like a thick fog. I was used to being in silence, but this was different. This was a silence I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't sure if you'd come, she said finally, breaking the silence. I wasn't sure either, I admitted, feeling the weight of it all. I had no idea what I was doing. All I knew was that I didn't want to be alone anymore. We talked for what felt like hours. She didn't ask about Grace. She didn't ask about the mess I was in, the lawyer calls, the house I was trying to sell. She just listened. And for the first time in so long, someone actually listened. She didn't try to fix things. She didn't try to make me feel better. She just let me speak without judgment, without expectation. Eventually, the conversation slowed. I wasn't sure how we'd gone from silence to words, but it had happened. And then, Just when I thought things were winding down, she looked at me with those soft, steady eyes. "Jake?" she started, her voice quieter now. "I know the timing is terrible, but I want to ask you something." My heart beat a little faster. What could she possibly want from me? "Would you want to go on a real date with me sometime?" I blinked, not sure I had heard her right. "You want to go out with me?" I asked, my voice coming out more surprised than I'd intended. She nodded, her cheeks flushing just a little. "I've always admired you," she said, her voice soft, almost apologetic. "But I never said anything because you were married, and that boundary mattered. But now, things are different, and I thought maybe this could be something, or at least worth exploring." I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if I was ready to even think about something like that. But looking at Betty, seeing the gentleness in her eyes, something shifted inside of me. "I don't know what the future looks like right now," I said slowly, "but I'd like to go out with you." She smiled, that same small, warm smile that made everything feel just a little more hopeful. "Okay," she whispered. I didn't know then, but that moment would be the start of something completely unexpected, something I never saw coming. The days following that first date with Betty felt like I was living in a different reality. It wasn't just the obvious shift, going out with Grace's best friend, but more like a quiet change that was happening deep inside me. I'd spent months trying to fix everything with Grace, fighting for something that was already lost. And yet, here I was with Betty, someone who had been in the background of my life for so long, suddenly stepping into the light. Our next few dates weren't anything special. No fancy restaurants or extravagant gestures. We kept it simple, low pressure. Coffee before work, walks around the neighborhood, even a movie night at her place where she fell asleep halfway through. I didn't mind. In fact, I loved it. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to try. I didn't have to plan some big romantic gesture or act like someone I wasn't. With Betty, everything felt natural, effortless. One evening, as we sat in her small apartment, the evening light filtering through the blinds, she said something that made me stop in my tracks. "Jake," she said, her voice a little quieter than usual, "I know you've been through a lot, but just want you to know that I see you. I see everything you've been carrying, and I just want you to know you're not alone." Her words hit me harder than I expected. It was like she had seen straight through the walls I'd built around myself, the walls I'd spent so long hiding behind. I hadn't realized just how much I needed to hear that. "I've been trying to get through this," I said, my voice rough, "trying to fix everything. But nothing seems to work, and now I'm just lost." Betty reached across the table, her hand gently resting on mine. It was a simple gesture, but for some reason, it felt like everything I'd been looking for had just found its way back to me. In that moment, I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel like the guy whose marriage had fallen apart. I just felt seen. We didn't talk about the divorce much. We didn't need to. It was still there, like an elephant in the room, but neither of us pushed it. Instead, we focused on the small things, how I liked to drink my coffee black, how she preferred to watch movies with subtitles, how we both had a soft spot for bad 90s sitcoms. It felt easy, like we were building something without rushing, without the pressure of expectations. But despite everything feeling right with Betty, there were still moments of doubt, moments where I'd catch myself wondering if I was moving too fast. Was I ready to start over? Was I ready to give my heart to someone else? One night, as we sat on the hood of my truck, overlooking the city, I asked her about it. "Do you think I'm ready for this?" I asked, my voice quiet as I stared at the lights below us. "I mean, after everything with Grace, can I even love again?" Betty was silent for a long time. I wasn't sure if she was thinking about her answer or simply letting the question settle in the air. When she spoke, her voice was soft but steady. "Jake," she began, her gaze meeting mine, "I don't think there's a timeline for love. You don't have to rush it. But I think you're already doing it. You're already opening up to the idea of something real. And that's enough for now." Her words didn't just comfort me. They gave me something I hadn't realized I needed, permission to take things one step at a time. I didn't have to figure everything out in one go. I didn't have to force myself to be okay. I just had to let things happen. As the weeks passed, we kept growing closer. We didn't have to talk about the past as much anymore, and that felt like a relief. But every now and then, when I least expected it, I'd get a text from Grace. It would always be about something trivial, how to handle the furniture, whether she could pick up the mail. But each time, the text would stir something in me. I didn't know if I was angry, or if I was just still hurt. I didn't know if I was ready to face that chapter of my life again. One day, as I stood in my apartment, sorting through a pile of papers, Betty walked in and saw the text from Grace on my phone. I didn't even have to show it to her. She could tell by the way I was staring at it that something was still holding me back. "I'm not asking you to forget her, Jake," Betty said, her voice gentle. "But you can't keep carrying that weight forever. You deserve to be free of it." It was like a light bulb went off in my head. She was right. I didn't need to forget what had happened, but I needed to let it go. Grace had made her choices. I couldn't keep letting her actions control my future. And more importantly, I couldn't let her steal the chance at something real, something I deserved. That night, after a long conversation with Betty, I made a decision. I was finally going to file the final paperwork for the divorce. I had dragged it on for months, not knowing how to close that chapter of my life. But now, with Betty's steady support and understanding, I was ready. And the moment I made that decision, something in me changed. I no longer felt like the victim of my past. I wasn't stuck in a loop of anger or regret. I was ready to move forward, ready to finally start living again. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, filling out the final divorce documents. Betty was sitting across from me, her presence a quiet anchor. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice soft but supportive. I nodded, taking a deep breath. "Yeah, I am. It's time." As I signed the papers, I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me. It wasn't the end of everything, it was just the beginning. And with Betty by my side, I finally felt like I had a shot at happiness again. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of it. A few weeks passed after I finalized the divorce, and things with Betty felt like they were moving at their own pace. I no longer felt like I was running on empty, constantly trying to patch up the pieces of my broken past. With Betty, everything seemed slower, softer, more deliberate. It was nothing like the rushed, high-stress pace of my marriage to Grace. It was a new kind of calm that I never expected to find in someone else. But as much as things felt right with Betty, the doubts still lingered in the back of my mind. Could I truly move on? Was I ready to embrace a new chapter? I hadn't felt love in so long. My heart had been buried under years of disappointment, but with Betty, it started to feel alive again. One Saturday afternoon, we were sitting on the couch in her apartment, the windows open to let in the cool breeze. She had her feet tucked under her, and I was leaning against the armrest, absent-mindedly flipping through a magazine. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. It was peaceful. But I could feel that we both knew there was something unsaid between us. "Jake," Betty started, her voice low. "Do you think you're ever going to be okay? With everything that happened? With Grace?" I froze for a moment, unsure how to respond. I had spent so much time pushing my feelings down, burying them under work, under distractions. But now Betty was asking me to face it all head on, and something about her question made me realize I couldn't keep avoiding it forever. "I don't know," I said slowly. "I thought I was okay, but sometimes it just feels like I can't shake the past, like it's always there, hanging over me." She didn't say anything right away. Instead, she shifted closer to me, her hand brushing mine. "I get it," she said softly. "But I also think you've been carrying this alone for so long. You've been trying to fix things with Grace for years, even when you knew deep down it wasn't going to work. I don't want you to feel like you're alone in this anymore." Her words hit me in a way I didn't expect. I had spent so long trying to fix things with Grace, fighting for a marriage that was already broken, that I forgot what it felt like to just be with someone who wasn't trying to fix me, someone who simply wanted to be there. And in that moment, I realized just how much I needed that. "I'm not asking you to forget," Betty continued, her eyes meeting mine. "But I want you to know that you deserve more than the empty space Grace left behind. You deserve someone who sees you, who chooses you every day. For the first time since I'd walked away from my marriage, I felt something deep in my chest, something I hadn't realized I was missing. I had spent so many years trying to be the man Grace needed, the husband who could fix everything, only to be left broken. But now, with Betty, I wasn't trying to fix myself. I was simply being. And that was enough. I don't know if I'll ever be fully okay with what happened, I admitted, my voice shaky. But I think, for the first time, I'm ready to move forward. Not because I'm over it, but because I have something better now. Someone who actually sees me. Betty smiled softly and took my hand in hers. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was enough to make my heart skip a beat. In that moment, I realized that I wasn't just moving on from my past. I was building a new future, one where I didn't have to carry the weight of old mistakes. We spent the rest of the day together, doing nothing but enjoying each other's company. We took a walk through the park, talking about everything and nothing. For the first time in ages, I wasn't thinking about Grace or the past. I was focused on the present, on Betty, and on what we were building together. The next week, something unexpected happened. Grace reached out to me. It wasn't a long message, just a short text asking if we could talk. Part of me wanted to ignore it. I didn't want to go back to that place, to reopen the wounds that had only just started healing. But another part of me, the part that was still trying to make sense of everything, wondered if I could finally get some closure. I met her at a small cafe downtown, the same one Grace and I used to visit when we first started dating. As I walked in, I saw her sitting at a table by the window. She looked different. Her hair was shorter, and she had the same tired look in her eyes that I remembered from the last year of our marriage. "Jake," she said when I sat down across from her, her voice quiet, "I wanted to apologize for everything." I wasn't sure what to say. It wasn't the apology I had expected. It wasn't the words I had dreamed of hearing for months, waiting for her to realize the damage she'd caused. But it was the first time she had ever acknowledged her part in everything, and for some reason, that felt like progress. "I don't know what I expected from this conversation," I said, shaking my head, "but I guess I never expected an apology." "I know," she replied softly. "I didn't realize what I had until it was too late. You were always there for me, Jake, but I was too focused on what I thought I wanted. And now I see that I lost the one person who actually cared about me." Quote. Her words were honest, but they didn't hurt like I thought they would. Maybe it was because I had already moved on. Or maybe it was because I had finally accepted that Grace was no longer part of my life. Whatever the reason, I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me. "I think we both know it's over," I said, my voice steady. "And I'm not angry anymore, Grace. I'm just done." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Jake. I really am." I didn't cry. I didn't feel the need to. I was finally letting go of all the anger, the disappointment, and the heartbreak. I had everything I needed right here, in this moment, with Betty by my side. When I left the cafe, I felt lighter than I had in years. The final chapter with Grace had been written, and it was time to move forward. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I texted Betty, "I'm done with it all. Thank you for waiting for me." Her reply came almost instantly. "I'm so proud of you, Jake. You deserve everything good that's coming your way." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. For the first time in ages, I truly believed her. And I finally felt ready to step into the life I had been waiting for all along. As the days passed after meeting with Grace, I felt a sense of peace that had been missing for years. I didn't have any grand epiphanies or moments of dramatic closure, but what I did have was a quiet acceptance. I had done everything I could to save a marriage that wasn't meant to be, and now it was time to truly let go. It was a simple, steady feeling, like finally taking a deep breath after holding it in for too long. Betty and I continued to grow closer. Every time I saw her, I was reminded that there was life after heartbreak, that there was someone who saw me for who I truly was, not as a broken man, but as someone who could love again. She never pushed me. She never rushed me into anything. It was as if we were both in this strange place together, where the past was just that, the past, and the present was enough. One evening, about a month after my meeting with Grace, Betty and I were sitting on the porch of my newly renovated house, the one I had bought all those years ago for a future that never came to be. But now, as I looked around at the newly planted grass and the fresh coat of paint, it didn't feel like a place of failure. It felt like a new beginning. The sun had just set, and the soft orange light was fading into the deep blue of the evening sky. We were sitting side by side, her head resting on my shoulder as we watched the stars start to appear. I could hear the crickets chirping in the distance and the occasional car driving by. For once, it was quiet, peaceful. "I've been thinking," Betty said after a long silence, her voice soft but steady, "about what you said before, that you were ready to move forward. I want you to know that I'm here. I'm not asking for anything, Jake, but I'm here for whatever comes next." Her words hit me in a way I wasn't prepared for. It wasn't a grand declaration of love or a promise for the future. It was just honesty. And in that moment, I realized that I didn't need to have all the answers. I didn't need to rush or force anything. I just needed to be with her. "I think about that too," I said, my voice quieter than usual. "About moving forward, about what we could have. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that I'm not afraid of it anymore." She looked up at me then, her brown eyes meeting mine, and there was something in her gaze, something soft, something real. I didn't need to say anything else. We didn't need to have a long conversation about our future or our plans. The silence between us was full of understanding, full of promise. And then, just as I thought the moment was settling, Betty smiled a little and reached for my hand. "I think I'm falling for you, Jake," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The words took me by surprise, but in the best way. My heart stuttered in my chest. I had been waiting for that moment, even if I hadn't realized it until now. "I think I'm falling for you too," I replied, my voice steady but filled with emotion I hadn't expected to feel so soon. We didn't rush anything after that. We simply enjoyed the time we spent together, building a relationship without the pressure of expectations or timelines. It wasn't perfect, and there were still days when the weight of my past would sneak up on me, but I no longer let it control my future. A few months later, Betty and I went to a small local park to walk around and enjoy the warm afternoon. The weather had turned crisp, and there was a slight chill in the air that made everything feel even more peaceful. As we walked along the path, I realized how far I had come. I had let go of my past, of the hurt and the betrayal. I had started to heal, and with Betty beside me, I felt like I was finally on the right path. It wasn't long after that we found out something that would change our lives forever. One evening, after dinner, Betty sat across from me, her face a little flushed. She wasn't sure how to bring it up, but I could tell something was on her mind. "Jake," she started, her voice nervous. I think I'm late." My heart skipped a beat. For a moment, I didn't process what she meant, but then it hit me. She wasn't talking about being late for dinner. She was talking about something much bigger. I looked at her, trying to keep the shock from showing on my face. "Late for what?" Betty smiled nervously, her hands shaking just a little. "I took a test this morning. It's positive. We're gonna have a baby." The words didn't sink in immediately. I sat there, staring at her, my mind racing. This was everything I had ever wanted, everything I had hoped for during my years with Grace, but never received. Now, here it was, happening with someone who loved me, who saw me, who wanted to build a life with me. I stood up, unable to sit still any longer, and walked over to her. I didn't know what to say, but then I wrapped my arms around her, holding her close. "We're having a baby," I whispered, the words finally sinking in. She smiled, her face beaming with joy. "Yeah, we are." Tears filled my eyes, not of sadness, but of disbelief. It wasn't the future I had imagined years ago, but it was the future I needed. It wasn't the life I had planned, but it was the life I had found with Betty. And for the first time in a long time, I knew I was exactly where I was meant to be. A few months later, we stood in the delivery room holding our daughter for the first time. As the nurse placed her in Betty's arms, I felt something inside me break open in the best possible way. This wasn't the family I had imagined years ago with Grace. This was a new family. A real family. A family built on love, trust, and everything I had been missing for so long. And as I looked at Betty holding our daughter, I whispered softly, "I've waited for you my whole life." She smiled through her tears, and for the first time in years, I knew that everything had finally come full circle. The story didn't end with revenge. It didn't end with anger or bitterness. It ended with the love I had been searching for all along, quiet, steady, real.
I hope you enjoyed today's tale. And what are your thoughts about the story? Please tell me in the comments and subscribe, like, and share my channel.